Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Doc here on Tuesday morning. Glad you joined us, and we're back together again. We're looking at Joshua, trying to find a few things that will help us in our walk with the Lord and our battles that we have to face that He's going to walk with us through. And remember, we talked last week about basically Joshua stepping into Moses' sandals and leading the children of Israel. And then we're talking this week about chapter 4 and talking about the memorial stones. Now, the one thing that Joshua was told to do that might be a little bit difficult for us to understand was that they were to take 12 stones from the river bed and where the priest had stood and the waters were rolled back, and they were to take them across and to pile them up on the other side. And that those stones were to be what was called a memorial. And we talked yesterday about Memorial Day and what memorials are there for and how do we affect our memory. And the basis for the whole thing was basically helping us to understand we need to not forget what God has done for us. Don't ever forget the things the Lord has brought you through. Now, there are some things that we go through that we don't know if we're ever going to get through them. But sometimes the problem is once we get through those tough times, we forget. And so He told the Israelites to erect a pile of stones as memorial stones. Now, we use the same thing as we said yesterday in baptism or in the Lord's Supper. These are things to remind us of what Christ has done for us. And so we looked yesterday at why we need memorials. And today I want to talk just a minute about how do we use those memorials? How do we use those things that have happened in the past to affect the present, His presence with us, and the future? How do we use them? And I would say the first thing is we use those memorials to teach our children, because our children haven't experienced everything that we have. And for many of us, we're old enough that we can tell stories and regale our grandchildren with stories and things like that. And some of you are young parents, and you're going through that process now with your children. But I would say that the main thing that we do to teach our children and our grandchildren is that we use those memorials and those things that has happened in our past and in the past of others to teach our children God's power and God's mercy, to teach them how God works and when God works, and to teach our children God's power. They're not going to learn that just on their own. We need to teach them. So how do we teach them? How do we use those memorials and teach our children? Well, Joshua in chapter 4, I think, explains it very well with just the scripture. Listen to Joshua chapter 4 and verse 6. He says that this may be a sign among you that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, "What do you mean by these stones? What are these stones here for?" Reminds you kind of the statues that everybody is so hungry to tear down. He says, what do you mean by these statues or these stones or these monuments? He said, then you shall answer them that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it passed over Jordan. The waters of Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. Now, if you've ever wondered what the Lord thought about statues and monuments, there it is. You can learn good things that happen by monuments. You can also learn bad things that happen by monuments and statues so that you don't ever tear them down again. And so that you don't ever repeat the bad stuff again. Again, in Joshua chapter 4, just a few verses on further down, In verse 21, it says, "And he spoke unto the children of Israel, saying, When your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean these stones? Then you shall let your children know." Now there it is, the process of teaching the children. "You shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you until you were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea." There they're going back to another time when God did something, "which he dried up from before us until we were gone over." So here he's saying, teach your children through these stones, through these monuments, through these statues. Use them to teach your children. And it was a basis of not only teaching them, but those memorial stones were to serve as a basis of sharing faith with their children. When a kid asks, "Daddy, what does the cross mean? Dad, what does it mean when these people are being baptized? Dad, why can't I take the Lord's Supper? What does the Lord's Supper mean?" And he says, whenever these things are asked about, those memorials serve as a basis for us to share our faith with our kids. And we need to remember that Christianity is never more than one generation away from extinction. If we lose our children one generation, we lost the whole thing. So why is Vacation Bible School during the summer that we're experiencing right now? Why is that so important? Because the kids. It's about the kids. I remember the times when I was pastoring and somebody had a child in there and the child would cry and someone would be so apologetic. "Oh, I'm sorry, my children cried." And I said, "Don't you ever apologize for your children making noise in the worship service. It's the sound of life. The next generation, the children." So don't ever forget that. That's why Proverbs 22 and verse 6 says this, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he'll not depart from it." Now that has two meanings. Number one, it means if you leave him on his own and let him train himself up, then he's never going to depart from that. He'd keep going that way. But it also means that when we train up a child in the way that he should go and correct and discipline and teach, then he'll never depart from it. I read where the British poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge once had a discussion with a man who firmly believed that children should not be given formal religious instruction, but should be free to choose their own religious faith when they reached a maturity old enough. And Coleridge did not disagree, but later he invited the man into his somewhat neglected garden, and the man said, "You call this a garden?" He said, "There's nothing but weeds in here." And Coleridge replied, "Well, you see, I didn't wish to infringe upon the liberty of the garden in any way. I was just giving the garden a chance to express itself." Don't do that with your kids. One other thing, it helps us, the memorials help us to reach not only our children, but it helps us to reach all others. That's what Joshua 4:24 meant when it said that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord that is mighty, that you might fear the Lord your God forever. Isn't it great? And another purpose of the memorial that's being placed there was that all the people of the earth would know that the Lord alone is God. That's what we're here for. We're witnesses to a lost and dying world. Matthew said it this way. Jesus said, "You're the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle, put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it gives light unto all that are in the house. So let your light so shine, let your memorial be visible enough before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." And Philippians 2, and we'll close with this today, "That you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom you shine as light in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. The words of W.A. Criswell, he said, you cannot hide a city that's set on a hill, nor can you hide a noble, worthy, steadfast Christian life. Your children are watching you. Your grandchildren are watching you. Everybody around is watching you. What are they seeing when they see our lives? Are they seeing a memorial that will remind them of what Christ has done? Let's teach the children. Let's teach the grandchildren. And let's teach all those who are watching around us. God bless you. Joshua said it. I believe it. And let's do it. I'll see you in the morning. God bless you. Have a great day today.